I did not die on the day my heart stopped beating. I died on the day my daughter erased me with a sentence. For most of my life, I believed love was proven through endurance. You stayed, you worked, you sacrificed. You stayed again, that was love, no applause, no witnesses. Just quiet persistence, like a candle burning itself away so another could see. When my wife died, the house fell silent in a way that still echoes in my bones. Our daughter was only 6. She stood beside the hospital bed holding my finger, her eyes too big for her face, asking me when her mother would wake up. I told her the truth gently, and from that moment on I became 2 people, father and mother, strength and softness, provider and comfort. I promised my wife at her grave that our daughter would never feel alone. Promises are dangerous things. They cost more than money. I worked anywhere that would take me. Construction sites at dawn, warehouse shifts at night, driving deliveries when my hands shook from exhaustion. Some days I forgot what my own living room looked like in daylight. I forgot birthdays, sleep, rest, but I never forgot to come home. Even when my body begged me to collapse, I would wash my hands, straighten my back, and smile before opening the door. Because my daughter deserved a father, not a ghost, she grew fast, faster than I could keep up with. School uniforms became branded clothes. Homework turned into private tutors. Her dreams grew larger than the walls of our small apartment, and I was proud. So proud it hurt. I sold my watch to pay for her first college application. I sold my wedding ring for her laptop. I told myself these were just objects. She was my future, but somewhere along the way, pride changed shape. She started correcting the way I spoke. Don't say that in front of my friends. She stopped inviting me to school events. Everyone's parents are different. That word sat between us at dinner like an uninvited guest. I noticed how she hesitated when friends asked about me. How she introduced me less and less. How she learned to step a half, meter away when we walked together in public. I pretended not to see it. Fathers are good at lying to themselves when the truth might cost them love. Then, one evening by accident or fate, I overheard her. I had come early to pick her up from a friend's house. The door was slightly open. Laughter spilled out, young and careless. I was about to knock when I heard her voice. My daughter's voice, clear, confident, unashamed. My father died, she said lightly, like she was talking about the weather, so he won't come to the wedding. The room erupted in sympathetic sounds. Someone said, "I'm so sorry." Someone else said, "At least you made it on your own." I stood frozen in the hallway, groceries heavy in my hands, my name erased in a sentence I never agreed to die in. In that moment, something inside me collapsed quietly, not dramatically, no tears, no screaming, just a slow internal cave-in, like a building condemned long before anyone noticed the cracks. I walked away without knocking. I don't remember how I got home. I only remember sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at my hands, wondering how they could still move when my heart had already been buried. Dead, that was the word she chose. I replayed every night I stayed awake by her bedside when she was sick. Every time I swallowed my pride when people mocked my clothes. Every dream I postponed. Every hunger I ignored. I wondered which of those moments failed her so badly that she felt the need to kill me off to survive her happiness. The wedding invitation arrived 2 weeks later. Her name, the groom's name, gold lettering, expensive paper. No mention of me. I laughed then, a soft, broken sound that surprised even me. So this was how it ended, not with an argument, not with rejection, but with absence. I was not even worthy of being excluded loudly. I was simply gone. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. The man staring back at me looked older than his years, lines carved by work, eyes dulled by years of unthanked love. But he was still standing. If I am dead, I whispered to my reflection, then I have nothing left to lose. I folded the invitation carefully and placed it in my pocket. I would go, not as a father she was proud of, not as a guest she invited, but as a man who had already died once, and had one last truth left to say. And so, while the world prepared to celebrate her beginning, I prepared to walk into a room where my existence would shock them all. Because even the dead, it turns out, sometimes come back to be seen. The lie did not begin on the day my daughter said I was dead. It began much earlier quietly, carefully stitched together from embarrassment, ambition, and fear. Lies like that don't scream. They whisper until even the person telling them forgets they are lying at all. To the world she built, she was self-made. She told her friends she grew up without much family. She said hardship shaped her, not a struggling father. She spoke of strength, independence, resilience, never once mentioning the man who woke before dawn to give her those things. And the world applauded. Her fiancé came from a family that measured worth in numbers, bank accounts, titles, last names engraved on glass doors. Their dinner conversations were filled with words like asterisk investments, asterisk reputation, asterisk legacy, asterisk. In that world, there was no place for a tired man with rough hands and a history of survival. So she erased me. The wedding preparations were a spectacle, a ballroom large enough to swallow voices. Chandeliers that sparkled like constellations, flowers flown in from countries I would never see. Every detail planned to perfection, every flaw carefully hidden, especially the one that had once tucked her in at night. She stood before mirrors in designer dresses, smiling at a reflection she barely recognized. Friends surrounded her, praising her taste, her elegance, her future. "Your parents would be so proud," one of them said once. She smiled and replied, without hesitation, "My father passed away years ago." Each time she said it, the words came easier. Still, there were moments, small, inconvenient moments when the lie cracked, when the florist asked who would walk her down the aisle, when the officiant asked for her father's name, when the seating chart forced her to leave a space empty she pretended didn't exist. She filled those gaps with silence. At night, alone in her luxury apartment, she sometimes scrolled through old photos. A younger version of herself sitting on a man's shoulders, a birthday cake made by clumsy hands, a smile too genuine to fake. She told herself it was necessary. He wouldn't fit in, she thought. He wouldn't understand this world. I did this to protect him. Lies are kind that way. They always come dressed as mercy. On the morning of the wedding, the city buzzed with excitement. Cars lined the streets. Guests arrived in tailored suits and glittering gowns. Laughter echoed through the halls like a rehearsal for happiness. Inside a private room, she stood in white. The dress was flawless. The fabric clung to her like a promise. Everyone told her she looked radiant, powerful, complete, yet something inside her felt unfinished. Her phone buzzed for a moment, a dangerous moment. She thought it might be him. She stared at the screen, her heart pounding, until the notification faded. Just another message of congratulations. Relief washed over her, followed immediately by something that felt like shame. She straightened her back. "Today is about me," she whispered. In the grand hall, guests took their seats. Conversations flowed easily. Such a brave girl, someone said, raised herself after losing her father. Another added. The lie grew larger, heavier, fed by sympathy and admiration. With every kind word spoken about her strength, the truth was buried deeper. No one noticed the empty chair in the front row. No one asked why the bride avoided looking at the entrance doors. The music swelled. The officiant took his place. The groom waited, confident and smiling, unaware that the foundation of this celebration was built on something fragile and false. And then the doors at the back of the hall opened, slowly. A hush crept through the room, subtle at first, like a breath held too long. A man stepped inside, not wealthy, not polished, but upright, calm, alive. One by one, conversations died. Faces turned pale, because the dead, it seemed, had decided to attend the wedding after all. The doors closed behind me with a sound that echoed louder than any music. Every step I took across the marble floor felt unreal, as if I were walking through a dream that belonged to someone else. Conversations had stopped completely now. Even the chandeliers seemed to hold their breath. I could feel eyes on me, confused, frightened, searching for an explanation no one had prepared for. Whispers rippled through the hall. "Isn't her father? I thought he was dead. Who is that man?" I kept my gaze forward. At the altar, my daughter stood frozen. Her smile had collapsed into something fragile and terrified, like glass about to shatter. Her hands trembled as they clutched her bouquet. For the first time in years, she looked small again. Not powerful, not untouchable, just a child caught in a lie too big to outrun. Her fiancé leaned toward her, whispering urgently. She didn't answer. I did not rush. I did not raise my voice. I had waited years to be seen. Another few seconds would not kill me again. When I reached the front, I turned to the officiant and said quietly, "May I speak?" He hesitated, scanning the room, the bride, the groom, the confused guests. No one stopped me. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe truth has a gravity that pulls silence in its direction. A microphone was placed in my hand. It felt heavier than I expected. I won't take much time. I began. My voice was steady, though my heart screamed. I know today is meant to be beautiful, and I promise I did not come to ruin it. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone near the back began to cry already, as if they sensed what was coming. I came because I was told I could not. I continued, because I was told I no longer existed. My daughter's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head slightly, a silent plea. I had answered enough silent pleas in my life. I am her father, I said simply. A murmur swept the room like a wave crashing against stone. I raised her alone after her mother died. I went on. I worked jobs that broke my body. I skipped meals so she could eat. I sold the last pieces of my past so she could have a future. I paused, swallowing hard, and I was proud every day. Tears streamed freely now, from strangers, from friends, from people who had never met me but suddenly understood everything. I did not come here for blame, I said, turning slightly toward my daughter. I understand shame. I understand wanting to belong. I understand fear. She was crying openly now, her shoulders shaking beneath the white fabric. But when you tell the world your father is dead, I said softly, you don't just bury him. You bury every night he stayed awake worrying about you, every dream he postponed, every piece of himself he gave away. The room was silent, except for sobs. I died standing in a hallway. I continued, my voice finally cracking, holding groceries for a daughter who no longer needed me alive. I took a breath and straightened. But the dead, I said, still love. I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. I paid for your education, I said calmly. I helped fund this wedding, quietly, anonymously, not because I wanted recognition, but because loving you was never a transaction. The groom's face had gone pale. He looked at my daughter with a mix of disbelief and dawning understanding. I came today. I finished, not to take anything away, but to give something back. I placed the envelope on the table beside the altar. My absence. Gasps filled the room. I release you, I said, looking directly at her. From the burden of being my daughter. Her knees nearly buckled. I hope your life is everything you dreamed of, I added gently. But I will no longer live as someone you pretend never existed. I handed the microphone back. As I turned to leave, the room broke. People cried openly now. Some stood. Some covered their mouths in shock. The lie that held the wedding together had shattered, and in its place stood something raw and undeniable. I walked toward the exit alone. Behind me, a daughter collapsed into sobs, and for the first time since I was declared dead, I felt alive. I did not hear the wedding end. By the time I stepped outside, the doors behind me were already closing on a life I no longer belonged to. The air felt lighter, as if something heavy had finally been lifted from my chest. I stood there for a moment, breathing, not as a ghost, not as a burden, but as a man who had reclaimed his name. Inside the hall, nothing went as planned. The music never resumed. Guests remained seated, stunned, mascara running, ties loosened, hearts shaken. Conversations that once sparkled with admiration now tasted of regret. The groom spoke first. He turned to my daughter and asked a single question, quietly, in a voice heavy with disappointment. Why, she had no answer that could survive the truth. She tried to explain. She spoke of pressure, of expectations, of fear of being judged. She cried and apologized, reaching for his hands the way she once reached for mine, when she was afraid of the dark. But lies once exposed lose their power to protect. The groom's parents' people, who had built empires on contracts and credibility, exchanged glances. Reputation mattered to them more than wealth, and integrity more than appearances. The wedding was postponed. Some said canceled, some said suspended. Words changed depending on who told the story, but one thing was certain: the celebration never resumed. That was the revenge, not chaos, not screaming, not humiliation, just truth. Days passed. I returned to my quiet life. The same apartment, the same chair by the window, but everything felt different now. I slept through the night, for the first time in years. I ate without guilt. I smiled without forcing it. I transferred the last of the money I had saved not to her, but to a scholarship fund for children raised by single parents. I put my wife's name on it, and mine. I wanted my love to live somewhere it would not be erased. My phone rang one evening. Her name lit up the screen. I did not answer, not out of anger, but because some lessons must echo in silence before they are understood. When she finally came to see me, she looked nothing like the bride from that day. No designer clothes, no perfect posture, just swollen eyes and shaking hands. She fell to her knees the moment I opened the door. "I killed you," she sobbed, "and I didn't even realize it." I knelt beside her, gently lifting her up. "You didn't kill me," I said softly. "You abandoned me." The difference mattered. She apologized again and again, words tumbling over each other like they could rebuild years in minutes. "I listened, I always had. I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. "You can't," I replied, "and that's okay." That was the sweetest revenge of all, not denying forgiveness, but refusing to erase the truth, to make forgiveness comfortable. "I love you," I told her. "That will never change." Her breath hitched. "But loving you," I continued, "doesn't mean disappearing for you anymore." I stood, offering her no promises, only honesty. When she left, the room felt peaceful. Months later, I heard she started telling people the truth, that her father was alive, that he loved her, that she lost him before she ever learned his worth. As for me, I learned something too. That day, I truly died, not because my heart stopped beating, but because I finally stopped begging to be remembered. And in that death, I found a life no lie could ever take away.